Thank you.
Good afternoon, folks. I'm Andy Langer. This is Gary Numan. So you're at the point in your career where we do these kind of things.
Yeah, it seems, yeah.
I mean, is that an interesting place to be? I mean, you have this body of work, you have a reputation as an innovator, and now we talk about your career. I mean, is that sort of heady stuff?
It's different. It's not something I'm comfortable with at all.
So this will be a great hour.
Well, I've never felt as if I really know what I'm doing. You know, and sometimes you get asked to go to places and give talks about, not like this, but I mean just stand up and talk. And I've always said no to everything because I don't really think I know that much about it. Honest to God, I'm not trying to be humble or anything. I really don't. You know, I think my career has been something that's kind of stumbled from one crisis to another. You know, it's not as if I got there and stayed there in this gloriously well-organised thing. It's been a shambles, to be honest. Yeah, it's had really good moments, and then you know, in '92 I was dead and buried. Yeah, I wasn't selling anything. I lost my record deal. I couldn't give tickets away. I literally couldn't give tickets away because we were trying to give them to people on the street to get people in, and people just walking past. I wasn't interested, so it got as bad as that, and I was massively in debt. You know, it's horrible, horrible.
When you do the autopsy on something like that, when you say in '92, I couldn't give tickets away, I had debt, I couldn't get songs played on the radio. I mean, is there an easy answer to why? Like, how does everything stop like that?
I think it's a slow process, really, and the problem for me is that we was aware of it going down, and we were always just one step behind doing something about it. You know, so things wouldn't go quite so well. So you would bring the stage show back a little bit. You know, you would try to do what you could not to lose money, but not enough. It actually got worse than you were prepared for, and it just carried on going. And I think it's true that you have a moment where everything is pretty easy, and from then on you need people that understand it far better than I ever did, that are able to guide you and help shape what comes next. And I think that's if you take it in a very commercial, strategic kind of way, which I tried to do, and I was just useless at it. So I was trying to write, I can't remember exactly when it started, but at some point in the 80s, you know, when it was clearly fading away, you start to listen. I was very, not arrogant in a big-headed way, but very sure of where I was going or what I wanted to do from a musical point of view. And I didn't listen to advice at all. If I'd listened to advice, I'd never got into electronic music to begin with. And but there comes that day when every decision you make isn't working, and it's getting worse and worse and worse, and you start to listen to advice. And that, to be honest, is a kiss of death, because you lose your own sense of what you are and what you do and how you want to sound and what you want to sing about and what you do. You lose it. You know, somebody will say, "Oh, ballads are doing really well at the minute. Oh, I'll write a fucking ballad then." You know, or do a cover. Gosh, shit. I did, somebody wanted me to, you know that song, "I was born one morning when the sun didn't shine, picked up a shovel," that one. So Miles Copeland, of all people, wanted me to do a cover version of that song. And he said, "But do it in the Gary Numan way." What does that mean? Well, so I said, "Oh, no, I won't. I don't want to do that." But we ended up doing a compromise, and I did a Prince cover. Yeah, it just, you know, Prince does Prince songs really, really well. I don't. Yeah. I mean, and it was a disaster, you know, and that's the problem. You end up doing things that you shouldn't be doing. It hurts you even more than if you hadn't done it at all, and it just goes away.
Well, that's when you let the business people into the art side, but you clearly, at some point, felt like you had a handle on the art side, and then the business people ran amok with the art side?
I lost faith in my own sense of direction, yeah. I honestly used to think, and I don't think it was true, but for a while I thought I had an instinctive feel for what I should do. You know, somebody would come along and say, we want you to do this, and I would just give it 2 seconds thought and say yes or no to it. Now that was pretty stupid, but that's how I felt I had. And then after a while, things started to not work out like that, and it just took me a while to realise I had no instinct whatsoever. None. In fact, I was quite appallingly bad at it. But the thing that changed for me was around about 1992, I did an album called Machine and Soul, which was just dreadful, dreadful. The worst album I ever made, at the worst time of my life. I was more in debt now. I was probably like $1 million in debt then, and it was, I had no career whatsoever. And I did think I was finished, so I gave up. I just thought, this is all gone now. But I still love music, and I still love writing songs. It was still a passion, much as it was when I was 14, 15. You know, you're doing it for the fun of it. And I went back to that. I went back to doing it for the love of it. And I started to write songs again without any of these worries about what A&R men were saying and radio play and all these things that kind of squash you down. And I kind of rediscovered my love for it again. And I hadn't realised that for some time I really hadn't enjoyed it. I'd just been doing it to try to salvage a career that was failing dismally. And I think without all that pressure, I started to write from the heart again, you know, things that I just genuinely loved rather than that I was being guided into or advised to do. And as soon as I did that, it was not only more fun and more enjoyable, but it was heavier and much darker than I'd done before. And anyway, I ended up making an album called Sacrifice, which was a very different animal to anything that I'd done before. And for some reason, it seemed to work, and I self-released it, but it did much better than things that I'd done before, which is very surprising because we had no strategy or budget or anything. We just let it out. I think the internet was creeping in by this time, and the thing that was most important to me was I was doing what I wanted to do. Again, I wasn't listening to anybody. Nobody was talking to me, so it wasn't. And I just suddenly do you know what it felt like? When I first started to do it, I was definitely on a road. I could see it very clearly, and I knew where I was going and what I wanted to do. And I've described it often that the success was so sudden. As you can imagine, sort of standing on a train station, and an express train that isn't stopping comes through really fast, and you just put your hand out and you grab it, and suddenly you're off, and you're going 200 miles an hour, and everything is a blur, and your feet are not on the ground, and you're kind of looking in at this new thing, but you're not really a part of it, but you don't let go because you got no idea what's going to happen, and then all of a sudden you just a few years later you lose your grip and you fall off and you tumble along, and you're all beaten up and bashed about, and that's where you start to find out where you've got to, because up until then you've got no idea. You're just being taken along, and I did 2 world tours in the first years, having never done any real gigs at all. You're suddenly... I've met Brian Ferry twice, both times in toilets doing different TV shows. So you're suddenly bumping into people in the toilet which are like legendary. You go, oh, hello. And it's just a bit weird. Anyway, sometimes it all falls off. But then I was lost, and I started to listen to advice, and you wander off this road that you had seen so clearly before. And with that Sacrifice album, it was as if I accidentally stumbled back across it again, and I suddenly felt comfortable, and I knew what I was doing again. And I think most importantly, my attitude was good again. I wasn't making music to try to salvage the career or to try to get on radio. I was making music that I really, really loved, and as soon as it went out the studio door, it would do what it was going to do. It would take its chances, but my bit was good. it was honourable is the wrong word, but it had integrity. It was just what I wanted to do.
It was honest.
With no thoughts about commercialism. And I've got a massive problem now with thinking commercially to such a degree that it happened on Splinter, but only once with the new album. When I'm working on a song, if I start to think, oh, yeah, that'll sound good on radio, I erase it. And I don't. And it sounds silly, and I'm not bullshitting it. I got such a thing about the state I got into before, why I was thinking that way. It's become a real issue for me now. And I am so determined to stay on this heartfelt route that I've been on for a while, since '94, that I honestly do. And I've only done it once, as I say, with that one album, but I don't ever want to think that way again, because it was horrible and it was soul destroying. And I didn't make good music either. It's not as if I turned out all these great chart-orientated songs. I was actually crap at it. I can't write pop music. I mean, Cars was my big one here. And that's a one-off. I don't think I've ever written anything else like it, really. And that was just, I was trying to learn to play bass guitar. It was. I've written, I don't know, 300-400 songs out on CD or something, albums, something like that. And only 2 of those are written on bass guitar. One of them was a nondescript album track, and Cars was the first one. I went to London to buy a bass guitar because I wanted to learn to play it better. And came home, opened the case, thing called a Shergold modulator, still got it, terrible guitar. And the very first thing I played went do-do-do-do. And I thought, oh, that's all right. Yeah, do-do. And the whole thing took about 10 minutes. Quickest song I ever wrote. Easy. I had everything, lyrics, everything were done in about 30 minutes, but the music took about 10 minutes. Almost as quick as it took to play it. Everything I did, that sounds all right, that sounds all right, and it was done. But that's unusual, I don't normally do things that quickly.
The analogy of the train and grabbing onto it, what's interesting there is that you say you feel like you're just looking in, and you're meeting guys at heroes in bathrooms.
Yeah.
You never felt like you were really a part of modern music at that time? No. I mean, because I think we think you were.
I never have done. I don't now. I still feel outside of it. I've never felt comfortable with it. Maybe that's just my nature. I'm not a natural showman at all. I have massive self-confidence issues as well. I find things like this quite nerve-wracking. In a peculiar way, over the last sort of few years, there's been an awful lot of really positive things said by a lot of really cool people. Trent and Foo Fighters have done cover versions, and it's just been amazing, absolutely amazing. And you would think at the end of all that I would begin to think I was all right, me. And I don't. It hasn't changed the way I am and the way I feel on the inside. I go into a studio now and have exactly the same worries and anxieties that I did. In fact, I probably have more now than when I first started. I think the first 2 or 3 albums I actually didn't have any. I was just loving it, and it was all new and exciting. And then I started to worry. You don't want to repeat yourself. You're aware of what people have said about the last album, and you're anxious about that. And so you, in a way, it's actually got worse, because the more you're bigged up, the more you kind of have to prove in a way. So the next album has to be special, because all these people have said that you're special, and you don't feel like that. You don't feel special. I can remember, almost every album I've ever made, but things like, I did an album called Pleasure Principle many years ago, and people often talk about that one now as being sort of quite influential. With Trent, that's the one that Trent mentions most of all. And I can clearly remember being in the studio on that one, just so anxious. Everything you did, is it good enough? Is it good enough? And making yourself sick with worry about it. And it's always like that with every one you make. So it's not. In a way, I think it's a good thing. If I was to take to heart all these positive things that I said, if I started to think that I was something special, then you probably wouldn't try in the same way. You would churn out some old piece of shit and say, that's got to be good because I did it. And I'm great, so therefore, yeah, and chuck all this stuff out. And so I don't want to feel like that, no matter how many lovely things are said. I don't think it do me any good. You know, I work really hard, and I really do agonise over pretty much every note on every track, on every record I make, and I'm worried about it.
But you're playing those mind games solely against yourself.
Yeah.
I mean...
psyching myself out all the time, yeah.
I mean, and if you can look at it that way and say, I'm here trying to protect this thing that's honest, and yet I know that people enjoy what I do, that there may not be the market for anything that there once was, but that they enjoy this thing when I do it honestly. How do you then allow yourself to sort of get caught up in this mind game?
I don't rely on the fact that people that like the last one will like the next one. Yeah, you have to bear in mind that I had a single in England that did really well called Our Friends Electric, and it sold about 1 million copies, I think it was, in England alone. Not that many years later, I did a single called Absolution, which I think was a much better song, and it sold 3,000. So 997,000 people have gone. Now, so you can't rely that they're going to be there from one album to the next, because they're not. Yeah, that thing, yeah, you're only as good as your next album, absolutely true. And I think we should think that way. And that should be the way it is. You know, you see too many people have careers that last more than a few albums, that they rely on their first bit of success, that they live on that. You know, some people, they spend their entire career kind of playing a set, and people are just waiting for that one or two songs because they've done nothing worthwhile since, and they don't really care. They're happy to live on past glories, and I think that sucks. Basically.
But it's not living on past glories to admit to yourself that you are an influencer, that you had a moment that people took in and turned into their music, whether it's Trent Reznor, whether it's the Foo Fighters. I mean, you acknowledge that, right? That this thing you did was influential.
Yeah.
We're good with that.
A long time ago. Yeah. Yeah. No, I do. I understand that. I'm sensible enough to know that that stuff had an effect, and I'm very grateful that that's acknowledged, and and I am proud of it. But it doesn't change how I feel about what I'm doing now, what I'm going to be doing next. That's great, but that was then, and it's done. My attitude to life in general is I'm very excited about tomorrow. I wonder what tomorrow is going to bring. I don't really care that much about yesterday because it's done. And apart from maybe learning from your mistakes, which is, it's an important thing to do, it's over. So don't dwell on it. And musically, so you wrote something a long time ago that did very, very well, but that was a long time ago, and you're still doing it. So you earn it again. Earn it every year. Every album you make, you must earn it again, or else you don't deserve to be here. I deserve to be here in 79, 80 because I did something that people now talk about as being, influential or special. That's not today. Today I have to earn it again, and we all should. Anyone that does this for a living, every album you make should be an attempt to do something better than you've ever done before. It shouldn't just be churn out some shit because 20 years ago you did something that people love, and we'll still come and see you because you did something. That's not a good attitude, I don't think. And I do think it's quite common, unfortunately.
If we look at that thing you did in 79, 80, this moment where this guy who's signed essentially as a punk act becomes this synthesized or synthesizer-driven pop act, that was the moment, right? I mean, and that's where you said, I can be different. And I can be different than what they even signed. I mean, do you remember the thinking there?
I can remember they were unhappy.
Okay.
Yeah, we were a three. I was in a band called Tube Army, and we was a three-piece punk band. I didn't really like punk, but I noticed that everybody was signing punk bands. So you got to get your foot in the door some way. So all right, we'll do a bit of that then. So I did that. shallow as anything, no integrity whatsoever. And so it started. Actually, I joined a band called the something. Can't remember. Everyone was called the something. And I'd just been thrown out of a band. Actually, I was in another band, and I've been thrown out of that one for some reason. So that sort of knocked me back a little bit because they were all my school friends. Decided to join another band. I thought I'd just join a rhythm guitar player, stay in the background, just build up a little bit of experience. And anyway, joined this band. At our first audition, I realised that they only did cover versions, and I didn't want to be in a cover version man. So I said, do you do any of your own songs? And nobody did. So I said, well, I've got loads, because I wrote all the songs in this last band. So they started doing all my songs. Their singer couldn't sing my songs, so I ended up singing them. And then I said, everyone's called The Something. Why don't we call ourselves something different to that? And they didn't have any ideas. And I've been writing loads of short stories at the time. And Tube Army was the chapter title of one of the short stories, so we decided to call it that. So although I'd intended to go to the audition and stand in the background, I ended up being a singer, doing all my songs and renaming the band in the first time. So I wasn't very good at just sitting back. Anyway, so we get signed as a punk band by Beggars Banquet, and they put us in the studio to record what should have been our live set. Dozen or so songs from a live set, all punk songs. And we get to the studio, and I notice a thing called a mini Moog, a little monophonic synthesizing corner. I'd never seen a real one before. Never been interested in electronic music, to be honest.
Had you heard it?
A little bit. I heard a bit of Kraftwerk, which I thought was okay, but it was all very, very synthetic. And I was okay with that, but I didn't want to do it. Eno and Bowie had done their kind of low, grandiose, almost classical electronic music, and I liked that, but I didn't want to do it. So it hadn't captured me in a way that I thought that's what I want to do at all. But I had a little go of this synthesizer, and I didn't know how they worked. Just all dials and switches and things. But the man said I could have a go of it, so we turned it on, and I just pressed a key, one of the keys, and this amazing sound came out. The room shook. It was so powerful, a huge low-end thing. And I loved it, and I just thought, that's for me. What an amazing thing. And it could have been left in a very different sort of sound, because I didn't set that sound up. That was left whoever had it before. It might have gone, doo, or something like that, because they can make some shit sounds. Right. I would have gone, bleh, and gone back to, and thought no more about it, but it was just luck, really. And so I was there for 3 days, I think it was, 3 days to make an album. And those were the days. And I, as in a very amateurish and very crude way, I converted my guitar punky songs into little one-finger electro, pseudo-punk electro songs. And I went back to the record company with that, and they were really angry. Really angry.
How did they express that anger? I mean, was it...
Well, at one point, there was 2 directors, one called Martin Mills, who's still there, he's a genius, very clever man, and another one called Nick Austin, who wasn't, I didn't think, quite so clever. And me and him actually stood, I'm only little, I can't fight for love nor money, but I was really passionate about it. I honestly thought that this was going to be massive. Not me necessarily, but electronic music in general was going to be massive.
Right.
And I was desperate to be a part of it. I didn't realise how many other people were actually doing it then. I thought I was kind of the only one that had just stumbled across it. But we actually stood up and went to have a fight. It was really, look at me, it'd have kicked the shit out of me. But I was so passionate about it and so convinced that it was going to be something. Electronic music was going to be something special. And I wanted to be at the front end of it. I wanted to be a part of it.